This is going to be a good one. Today we have a very special guest on the program, someone who is a sports broadcaster, also an author. One of his books is being turned into a movie very, very soon. And he's also a professional baseball manager. One of the most wide-ranging interviews you will hear in quite some time, and it's coming up next.
Welcome to the Sportscasters Club radio show, where it's all about becoming a better sportscaster and a better sports fan. And now, your host, a man who began his sports broadcasting career way back in 1993, Rick Schultz.
Welcome to another episode of the Sportscasters Club online radio show. I am Rick Schultz. Welcome to our program today. This is going to be a really fun episode because it's got a lot of great material in it. We're going to be joined by Bill Rogan, who is a broadcaster, a veteran broadcaster for many decades now. Started out in the New York area, the New York market, and now broadcasting almost on the other end of the country in the Denver, Colorado market. But also this is somebody who is a professional in other areas. He's written many books. One of his books is going to be made into a movie in the very near future. It's already in production. I saw a trailer on Facebook this week. Really awesome. And it's quite a book. And we're going to get into that during this conversation. And also, he is now a professional baseball manager. That's right. He's actually managing on the field. And I've gotten to know Bill. I think I met Bill back in 1994, and I'll talk during our conversation about how we got to know each other a few decades ago, and it's really quite an interesting story. It actually ties into my beginning and my start in professional baseball broadcasting, so a really awesome, enlightening conversation. Bill has a lot of tips for aspiring sportscasters who are just getting started, and also established sports broadcasters. So a fun interview with Bill Rogan that's coming up next. And before we get to that, just want to remind you to please join us on our free Facebook group. It's called the Sportscasters Club Community. Just search for it on Facebook. It's a free group, and it's really a place where sportscasters of all levels gather to share thoughts, tips, advice, how to improve, different thoughts about sportscasting and also the sports industry in general. So feel free to join us on Facebook at the Facebook. It's called the Sportscasters Club Community. It's a free group, absolutely free. Feel free to join us and give your input. You can ask some questions there and get it answered by not only myself, but other people in the industry. So we'd love to have you on our Facebook group. When I come back, our interview with Bill Rogan.
Are you searching for one-on-one coaching to take your sports broadcasting career to the next level? Visit the coaching section on our website, sportscastersclub.com.
All right, a lot of fun today as we are set to chat with Bill Rogan here on the Sportscasters Club online radio show. I am Rick Schultz. And Bill Rogan is somebody who I've known since 1994. He helped me get my start in professional baseball broadcasting. And he's somebody that's not only a veteran broadcaster and has a lot of helpful tips for aspiring sportscasters, but he's also an author, and he's also a professional baseball manager. And so here is our conversation with Bill Rogan. All right. Right now, it's our special pleasure to have Bill Rogan on the air. Bill, we welcome you to the program. How are you?
I'm doing good, and it's always nice to talk to you, Rick. We have a long history.
Long history. My minor league baseball career began when you allowed me to join you on broadcast and do post-game interviews back in 1994.
Well, I saw that you were hungry, you were eager, and you had some talent, and I figured, why not give the kid a shot? And you did very well.
So I fooled you.
Yes, you did.
Well, I'm glad you brought it up that way because I wanted to pick your brain a little bit here because a lot of the sports fans that listen to this program are aspiring sportscasters, and you mentioned a couple words right there. If you had to give any advice to aspiring sportscasters, what is it that they need to have, or what are some tips that you would give anyone who's starting out in the industry?
My biggest tip would be fundamentals. Don't try to be Vin Scully, who had 50 years experience and he could weave, Siberian tigers into a broadcast. Start with the basics. Know the rules. Know the fundamentals of broadcasting. Know to give the time and score. Time for a basketball game or football game, inning for baseball, frames for bowling, whatever the case may be. Know the fundamentals and don't have too big of an ego. Don't try to dazzle people and say, hey, I'm doing these high school games in the middle of Western Pennsylvania. If I do really good, I'll be on ESPN next week. Don't think like that. Enjoy the journey, build a solid foundation, and work your way up. Very few guys are like Vin Scully who can go from Fordham University to a major league broadcasting booth. So take your time, enjoy the journey, but know the fundamentals, know the rules, get to know the players, pick up a rhythm. Take little pieces from broadcasters you admire, but don't copy them. There's only one Ernie Harwell. There's only one Marv Albert. But if you incorporate little pieces of them along with your own personality, I think that's the best way to go.
Bill, I've talked about a few of the things you just mentioned there for many years in my classes at Fordham and at Marist College. I've talked about the ESPN influence, and you kind of touched on some of that with trying to be just like some of the other personalities people see out there. Do you think ESPN has changed it in a negative way in that sense, where broadcasters are trying to copy all the time?
Now, there's some very good broadcasters at ESPN that I think do what they're supposed to do, convey what's going on the field or in the studio, whatever the case is. But you also have a segment of ESPN that tries to be ultra cool. And I think a lot of young broadcasters feel they have to be that way to get to ESPN. And, ESPN is not all that. Very few people go there. A lot of people like radio. Stay with where you are. You may be a big fish in a small pond. You don't have to always have these ultra high aspirations. And I think there's a lot of guys at ESPN that it's hard to listen to because they try to make everything a joke. You can't force humor. If something's funny and you have a good one-liner, great. But you don't want to make your broadcast a comedy show because it's really not about you. It's about the listeners tuning in to hear a game. They want to listen to a Lions-Giants game, and they don't need somebody cracking jokes. If they wanted that, they'd go to the comedy club. That's not to say you can't be funny during your broadcast and have some good one-liners. But you can't go in there thinking, I'm going to dazzle, I'm going to be the show, people are going to love me, I'm going to go to... No, it's not about you. And I, like you said years ago in one of your classes with Marty Glickman, he said, the only person tuning in to hear you is your mother. If people want to hear the game, stick to the game. And if you do a good job, that's going to really help you. In the long run, it all comes back to you if you do a good job.
How do you walk that fine line as a new broadcaster when you want to have personality, but at the same time, you don't want to overshadow the game you're broadcasting?
That's a really, really good question. First of all, preparation is huge. If you're prepared, you won't be stuck trying to think of something and forcing something or talking about something you're not familiar with. You can't make stuff up. So that would ruin your credibility. But if you're prepared and you're doing the game, and the game lends itself to a little bit of humor here or there, if there's a funny play or, an official does something funny, whatever the case is, you can have fun with that. But again, that's your personality coming out. But you always have to remember the main thing is the game. You don't want to stray too far from it. Now, if you're broadcasting, say, a basketball game, and it's 63-30 early in the second half, it's not a close game. It's kind of boring, probably. One team is steamrolling the other. Especially if you're the team on the losing end, if you're broadcasting for them, it makes it a little bit tougher. You don't want to rip your team, but you also want to, criticize fairly. But then you can stray into maybe a little bit more offbeat things, maybe a little comedy, or that's where your preparation comes in. You can throw out some facts, you can promote something else, upcoming games, but you got to be prepared, and it's okay to have some fun. But I always found out in a close game, reel the comedy in, reel the personality in a little bit and go straight with the game. That's what people want to hear.
I completely agree. Completely agree. And I think we've gotten away from that in many places. We're chatting with Bill Rogan from Denver, Colorado. And Bill is somebody who broadcast for many years, decades here on the East Coast in the New York area, and now out in Colorado. And Bill, I do want to touch on a couple other aspects of your career in just a minute. What are some of the bigger differences you've seen in broadcasting and sports radio, play-by-play, East Coast versus where you are now out in Denver?
Well, I think on the East Coast, and I'm familiar mostly with New York, Philadelphia, and Boston, the main thing is the fans are different. For instance, in New York, Boston, and Philadelphia, great fans, they don't just want their teams to win. They need their teams to win. And when their teams don't win, it's almost a personal affront. Whereas in Colorado and generally the Midwest, and I've noticed that fans want their teams to win. And if they don't win, it's, oh, well. The one exception might be the Broncos. When the Denver Broncos lose, you can feel a gray cloud over this town. But when the Avalanche lose or the Rockies lose, it's not a big deal. It's like, oh, well. But in New York and Boston, those fans need their teams to win. And I think the fans on the East Coast expect their broadcasters to be critical. You know, if a team is playing poorly and the broadcaster hammers them, I don't think the fans mind so much. Out here, there's very few real critical broadcasters of their team. As a matter of fact, I know a guy named Jason Hirsch, and he pitched for the Colorado Rockies. He was on their World Series team in 2007. A few years ago, he was a studio analyst for them. And the Rockies had a poor team, and Jason, his expertise is pitching, and he would hammer them. You know, they give up 11 runs, and he'd be critical, as he should be. And that was the only year he did it because they felt he was too negative, too critical. They wanted all happy talk. And he said to them, what do you want me to say when they walk 11 guys, give up 12 hits, get shelled? I mean, I can't put a pretty picture on that. So, you know, sometimes in broadcasting, criticalness and being playing it straight can almost hurt you at times. You know, there's a fine line between, I don't like homers, but some places they want homers. And I think here in Colorado, you know, if you're a homer, your job security is better than if you were to play it straight.
That is an awesome point.
And I don't like that. I mean, I grew up listening to Marv Albert. And if the Rangers were playing poorly, he let you know. Or if the Knicks were playing bad, he would say it. On the flip side, if they were playing well, he'd praise them. I mean, he talked about what he saw. He gave his opinion on what he saw. And I thought he was very fair. When you listen to some broadcasters, you know, all over the country, if they're not homers, they may not have a long career. So I don't think sportscasting is better now necessarily than it was maybe in the 1960s even.
We're definitely going to have you back on to talk more about that because I know you and I can discuss that topic and some of the reasons it's gotten to that level and some of the remedies for it. But today I also want to touch on a couple other areas because you have quite a unique background, author, manager, baseball manager, and I want to touch on a couple of those aspects because I was flipping through Facebook the other day and I saw a great trailer for a new movie that's in production, and it's the movie that you wrote the book for, a book called Still Pitching, The Story of the Fish, Baseball, Dark Days, and Salvation. How did this book come about when you published it back in, I think it was 2014?
Yeah, well, I had published a couple of other books, some sports fiction books. I did a book on sports talk personalities, and my publisher was on me to come up with something else. And I didn't know what to write about. And it's hard to just force it. You can't say, well, I got to write a book. Let me write a book on kitchen interiors. It has to come to you, whatever the subject is. So I play old guys baseball, still play in the adult leagues here in Denver. And one year we had a guy on our team named Rick Fisher. And he had come to us from another team. And he was kind of a character, an older guy. At the time, he was 61. And he was still pitching and very good. He was a very good pitcher. And he was a character. Kind of looked like George Carlin. Picture George Carlin as a baseball player. So I got to know him a little bit. And I said, hey, Rick, I'd like to do a book with you. What do you mean? I'd like to talk about your life story, your baseball career. I thought it would be a simple book of funny baseball stories, a love of the game type thing. And he said, I don't know. I don't think I want to do it. And I said, why not? He goes, all right. So another week or two went by. I brought it up again, and I'm not interested. And it got me curious because I think a lot of people would be flattered to have a book written about them. But he was hiding something. I got a sense there was something there. So I went back to him a third time. I said, Rick, we don't have to do the book, but tell me why you're so reluctant. And he said, there's a lot of things about me that I'm embarrassed about and I don't want people to know about. And I said, such as, and then he went into it. He had a tough childhood. His dad was very tough on him. They were a military family. He got into drugs when he went to Vietnam. He was on drugs and alcohol for years. He was married 5 times, divorced 5 times, tried to commit suicide 4 times, obviously failed at that. He wasn't good at that, fortunately. But he just had a really messed up life. And he was at rock bottom, wanting to kill himself once and for all. And his friend made him go to this pastor, a guy named Pastor Fuji. And he went there, and the pastor brought him in, and Rick yelled at him for like 2 hours, just yelling at him. And the pastor sat there and listened. And then he said, I can't help you, Rick. And then Rick said, well, if you can't help me, who can? And if you can't, I might as well just finish the job. He goes, I know who can help you. And they started praying. And Rick tells the story about when they started praying, they were crying. Pastor Fuji, embraced them. Rick was crying. He said he could feel evil spirits and demons leaving his body, and he felt the Lord entering his body. And from that moment on, and he said it was like a light switch. From that moment on, he never had a desire to do drugs or drink again, and he hasn't. Never had a single thought about killing himself again, and he hasn't. And it totally turned his life around. And he's been clean. This happened in 2001. So he's been clean almost 20 years now. And so I told Rick, this might be a really good story to put in a book. And again, he was apprehensive. But the thing that turned him around, when I said, Rick, your story might be able to help other people. And the light bulb went off. He said, let's do it. And I said, we can only do it if you're completely honest about everything. He said, you got it. So, I brought him into my radio studio like 7, 8 times, and we did the interviews, and I put the book together, interviewed his dad, his sister, his daughter, and put this together. And then this filmmaker in Georgia by the name of Bill Rogan, R-A-H-N, he got wind of the story somehow, called me up and said he wanted to do a movie about this.
Awesome.
And I said, well, let me talk to Rick. And Rick was all for it because, again, his story may reach other people. And we did some book signings, and people would come back and get extra books because they knew some people that may need help. And it's not always getting help from drugs or alcohol, but maybe helping somebody spiritually. They may have depression. They may have other issues. But it shows that if Rick can come back from where he was, and the still pitching part of the book is he's still pitching, but baseball was the one constant in his life from when he was 6 years old to now. It's the only thing that made him feel normal. The only thing he really loved was baseball. And as a matter of fact, he was really good. The Kansas City Royals offered him a contract. They went to his house, but his dad was there. They couldn't find Rick. He was strung out on drugs somewhere. So he had a chance to play professional baseball, and he blew it. And that's part of the story that's in the movie.
It's really quite a story, and it's a baseball story, but it's a life story. It's called Still Pitching: Baseball, Dark Days, and Salvation. And that trailer, it looks like a really well done film. Bill, what's the timeline?
I don't really know. I had a bit part in it when they were here. They were filming for a few weeks here in February, but they're going to come back hopefully in May. We don't know with this coronavirus stuff when they'll be back, but they got to do the baseball scenes now. And there's some pretty good baseball scenes in there. And then after they do the baseball scenes, Bill Rogan will go back to Georgia, do all the editing and the post-production stuff. And then hopefully September, October, the movie will come out. They're going to have a premiere here in Denver. And then I don't know where it's going to be released.
It's
a
awesome.
low budget film. It's not one of these, $40 million blockbusters, I think it's only like maybe a $500,000 budget, but I know I can count on you, Rick, for 100,000 or so to defray costs.
I'm ready to go. I'm ready to contribute.
If you're familiar with Denver, if you want to be in the baseball scenes, fly on out.
I should come out. It really looked very well done. What I saw on the trailer that's circulating out on Facebook. The book is called Still Pitching: Baseball, Dark Days, and Salvation. We're chatting with the author of that book, Bill Rogan, who is a longtime broadcaster, which is really the main reason we had you on to talk today. But before we wrap up, Bill, and I do want to get to a lightning round where I ask you some quick questions. But before I do that, you mentioned the warmer weather coming. I know you're looking forward to that warmer baseball weather because not only are you a broadcaster and an author, but you're also a baseball manager in the Pecos League. How did that come about?
The Pecos League, it's the lowest level of independent baseball, independent pro baseball. And it came about in 2018, actually in the winter of 2017, 2018. Well, I guess around Christmas time, 2017, I was on the internet and I discovered this thing called the Pecos League. I'd never heard of it. And they had a team here in Trinidad, Colorado, which is about 3 hours south of Denver, not far from the New Mexico border. I said, how in the world did I never hear of this team, being a big baseball fan? So in the summer of 2018, I went down there to see a game. And Trinidad played Garden City, Kansas. And Trinidad beat their heads in like 18-2. And I wasn't upset with the result, but I was upset with the way Garden City went about their business. They weren't really hustling. They kind of took their beating and with very little resistance. And I thought, well, it's one of those games, So I went back 3 weeks later and they were playing Garden City again. And Garden City again got their heads beat in and offered no resistance. And I looked at their manager and he was a low energy guy. He would walk out to third base, walk back. He didn't squawk at the umpires. He didn't talk to his team. It's just like he didn't want to be there. And they ended up going like 11-50 that year or something like that. A really bad record. So I thought I could do better than this guy. I know I can do better than him. And so I was thinking about it, and I thought it would be a passing interest, but it wasn't. It stayed on my mind. So at the end of the year, about 2 weeks after, I went on the Pecos League website, and sure enough, they had a couple of job openings for managers. So I threw my hat in the ring. I get a call from the commissioner about a month later named Andrew Dunn, and he's calling me, and he's interested in me managing. And we had a few more interviews. He came out to Denver. We went to dinner. And, I thought I actually had a shot, and he eventually hired me in December of 2018. He hired me, and I was kind of shocked because there were about 100 people who applied for maybe 4 manager jobs. And so I asked him, I said, why did you pick me out of all these guys? Because some guys had college coaching experience. There were a few guys who had pro experience.
Sure. Some
guys had managerial experience. He said, you were just different. I was pretty much the only one who talked about the fans and the media. Because I remember in our interview, I said, I can't guarantee a championship. However, I will tell you this, we will have the most fan-friendly and media-friendly team in the league. And I think that helped sell him on it because there's a lot of promotion, as you know, in minor league baseball. And your manager really has to be kind of friendly to everybody. He can't be an ogre. And you and I, we broadcast games for Hudson Valley, and we had a couple of really good managers who got it, like Doug Sisson and Bump Wills. And then we had a manager, maybe who didn't get it.
Charlie Montoya was an awesome one there.
Charlie was great, and that's why I root for the Blue Jays. I don't root for them to beat the Yankees, but I root for the Blue Jays because of Charlie. But it's kind of neat when you see guys that get to the major leagues. So anyway, that's how I started managing. I managed last year in Tucson, Arizona. This year I'll be managing in Santa Fe, New Mexico, which I prefer because it's closer to Denver and the travel's not as bad. Travel really killed us last year because we were in the Pacific Division of the Pecos League, and the travel is just ridiculous from Tucson. So
that is really quite a story. Yeah. And each of these sections of your, we could have spent an hour talking about the broadcasting part, or an hour talking about the book and the movie, and now another hour talking about your managerial career. And we'll definitely have you back on, I think, to talk more about each of those. But before we wrap up, Bill, I really want to get to this lightning round. All right. You ready for this?
I'm ready.
All right, our lightning round with Bill Rogan. 5 questions, 4 baseball questions, and then 1 non-baseball question. Okay, here we go. The lightning round starts with question number 1. Your favorite sports book, Bill?
Ball 4 by Jim Bouton.
Oh, that is great. I was thinking about that book as I put this question down today. What'd you like so much about it?
Just the honesty, the behind-the-scenes look, which was rare at that time. It was about the 1969 season. The book came out in 1970. And you look back at it now, it's kind of tame. But at the time, I was like, oh, my God. We didn't realize players did this and that. They actually go to bars and drink. We thought they survived on milk and cookies. So it opened up people's eyes. And I got to know Jim Bouton years later. I played on a team with him in the old New Jersey Met League, the Little Ferry Giants, and he was a great guy, Jim Bouton. He passed away about a year ago, but I love that book. I read it maybe once every 2 years or so.
Awesome book. For any baseball author, it really sets the template. Okay, question number 2, Bill. If you could have dinner with any athlete, past or present, who would it be?
Ty Cobb.
Ty Cobb. Oh, gosh, yeah, that would be an antagonistic dinner, but you'd probably learn a ton.
Well, there was a book written by, I can't remember the author's name. It was called A Terrible Beauty. And it debunks a lot of myths about Ty Cobb. It makes a very compelling argument that he wasn't really the ogre that people thought he was. Sometimes, especially when there's no visual, there was no camera stuff back then like we have today. Stories can get exaggerated. They can take on a life of its own. And I think that might have been the case with Ty Cobb. So I would like to have dinner with him. Plus, he was very wealthy. I think he would pick up the check. He was the first millionaire athlete because he grew up in Georgia, and that's where Coca-Cola was. And so he got Coca-Cola stock when he was a young man, and he kept buying stock in Coca-Cola. And he played ball in Detroit, and that's where General Motors took off, and he got stock there. So he became a very wealthy man outside of baseball. Sharp guy. I'd like to have dinner with Ty Cobb. And if he could make it, Babe Ruth would be another good one, and maybe Sandy Koufax.
Oh, there's so many great choices. 3 really good ones right there. I like your answers. All right, lightning round question number 3. Who's the best radio play-by-play broadcaster of all time?
Oh, boy. That is a good one. That is a good one. I would have to say Vin Scully, followed by Ernie Harwell, and then Marv Albert. I would go with those 3.
3 awesome picks. And
how do you go against Vin Scully? And people remember a lot of his great calls, but one call Vin had that just astounded me because it was the perfect call. I was watching a game maybe 10 years ago, and a pitcher threw the pitch, and it went sideways. It went like over the third base dugout. It slipped out of his hand. And Vince said, it looked like he was trying to throw a wet bar of soap. And that was the perfect. I would never have come up with that, but that's what it looked like. And so he was brilliant, Vin. Still is. I mean, he's not broadcasting games anymore, but what a great broadcaster. I can't put anyone ahead of him.
You're right. And a great guy, a Fordham guy. I got to know him by talking to him pretty frequently when I was the sports director at WFUV at Fordham. Just a great guy. All right. Number 4.
Hold on a second. Just going back to Vin Scully. I met him at Coors Field. And for about 3 years, I was afraid to go up to him. And I finally mustered enough guts to go up to him and introduce myself. And I called him Mr. Scully. And he said, no, Vin. And we talked. And I asked him about playing baseball at Fordham, and he got a big smile on his face. He said, I could throw the glove around pretty good, but I couldn't hit the curveball. So,
what a guy. You sounded a little like him there, Bill.
I wish I did in real life.
We're wrapping up with Bill Rogan. We've got a couple questions left in our lightning round. Okay, Bill, question number 4. When you were young, what was your favorite baseball card?
The 1970 Bobby Mercer card. Nice. And he's just swinging the bat. It's a posed photo, swinging the bat. I just love that card, and he was my guy, Bobby Mercer, growing up.
Awesome. I really enjoyed him on the air as a broadcaster as well. As we wrap it up, our last question, a non-baseball question. Bill, if you're going to sit down, put your feet up, crack open an iced tea, if there's one movie you want to come on the television screen, what is it?
Wow, that is a good one. One movie. I still think the original Rocky movie was wonderful. It had a sweetness to it. It had a little bit of a believable storyline, but it was just a good, simple movie. No big special effects, no, crazy plot line or anything. It was an understandable, simple, cinematic masterpiece, in my opinion. So if Rocky came on, I would be very happy to watch it.
That's awesome. Can't argue with Rocky at all.
How about you?
Oh, there's so many out there. I know one movie we share in common is Scent of a Woman, just a classic from a couple decades ago.
Hey, you sharpshooting me, punk? That was a great movie, too. I love that movie. There are so many of them, but I was thinking more in the sports genre.
Sure.
But Rocky, can't go wrong there. Although Rocky 37, I think they kind of got carried away.
Well, Bill, we could chat all day and talk about all these different topics, but we thank you for joining us on the program. We'll have you on again to talk more about sportscasting, about managing, about writing books and creating movies and all the different parts of your career. So thanks for the time. We really appreciate your time today.
Rick, thank you very much. It was a pleasure. And to all the aspiring broadcasters out there, keep working hard. Good things will happen.
If you love this radio show, please hit the subscribe button and don't forget to share, like, and leave reviews. Your friends will thank you, and they'll think you're super cool.
I hope you enjoyed that conversation with Bill Rogan. As you can see, he is full of personality, and he's someone who has a lot of great opinions, not only on sportscasting, but on the sports media industry in general. And for all of you aspiring sportscasters, I hope you took a lot of the things he said during that conversation to heart, talking about determination, certain things you need to do to start a career, some helpful tips. And so please go back and re-listen to this episode. As a matter of fact, all of our episodes of the Sportscasters Club online radio show, because as Robert Kiyosaki says during his wonderful online radio show, the way we learn is through repetition. And so by hearing thoughts that I discuss on the podcast and then hearing thoughts that our guests talk about, that's how you improve, and you start to build those into your repertoire and build those into your skills and your abilities, and that's how you improve as a sportscaster. So really enjoyed our conversation with Bill, and as you heard him talk about, Bill is the one that gave me my start in professional baseball broadcasting. Back in 1994, the Hudson Valley Renegades, he was the first broadcaster for the team, and I wanted to be involved with professional baseball in the Hudson Valley. And so I was 18 years old. I got a job as a program salesman. And so I was selling programs. At the time, I was also working for a local sports newspaper. And I think I was getting paid $20 an episode to write articles as the sports editor for this newspaper called the Sports Journal. And so the first workout that professional baseball team had, it was an affiliate of the Texas Rangers. I went to the workout to write for the Sports Journal, and there was Bill Rogan. We were the only two there. I introduced myself. He told me he was the new broadcaster for the newly relocated Hudson Valley Renegades. And I asked him a lot of questions. I did an interview with Bill that day. I still have it on one of those little teeny tiny mini cassette tapes. And through that meeting, Bill eventually allowed me to start helping him on the radio broadcasts, conducting post-game interviews. Later on during the season, I was on the air with him for an inning or two. By the end of the year, I was selling my programs as fast as I could and then hustling up to the radio booth to join him on the radio, and also traveling to road games where I would sleep on the floor in the hotel with a sleeping bag. Sometimes I would ride on the bus, sometimes I would take my own car. But that's how I got started. I was not getting paid a penny for the broadcasting, but the experience was invaluable. And you heard Bill talk about some of those things during our interview. So thanks to Bill Rogan. We'll definitely have him on again to talk about some of the other things. We could really spend an hour talking about how to start a career. And I'd love to talk more about his book, Still Pitching, which is, as you heard, going to be coming out as a movie. And I'm sure you can find that trailer if you look online, because I saw it was about a 3-minute trailer on Facebook. Really, Really looked like a professionally done film. Looking forward to seeing that. And also his career as a baseball manager now in his second season in the Pecos League as a professional baseball manager. We could spend hours talking about that, and I'm sure we'll have Bill back on to discuss some of those things as well. So thanks again to Bill Rogan for joining us, and thanks to you for listening to us here on the Sportscasters Club online radio show. I'm Rick Schultz. We hope you joined us. Hope you enjoyed this, and we really appreciate you sharing this with at least one other person you think could benefit. And if you're listening to the podcast, subscribe so every time we release a new episode, it comes right to your mobile device. So we thank you for that. Hope you enjoyed today's episode, and we will talk to you again next time.
Thanks for listening to the Sportscasters Club radio show at sportscastersclub.com. Don't forget to subscribe so you will never miss an episode. And thanks for liking, sharing, posting reviews, and spreading the word.